right. So I hope y'all can hear me. We are getting everything ready to go here. So, all right, it is 7 o'clock on Monday. So thank y'all for joining. This is the broadcast number 2, okay, of iCOACH. And I don't know how you found this page, whether it was through something that we posted or just randomly found it on the internet. Either way, thank y'all for being here. This is the first ever live broadcast for iCOACH. I'm sure we'll have some challenges. Sure we'll have some things pop up unexpectedly, but we tried to plan for those things. And, as we saw last week, you plan and plan and plan. You come up with this, what you think is a great plan for everything that can go wrong. And something so goes wrong out of your control, you can't handle it. Or you can't plan for that kind of thing. So hopefully everything runs smoothly, but we're going to get into it. So I want to start each show with something, outside of what we're going to talk about, because some of the topics we'll talk about will get pretty serious. So sometimes I'll have some lighthearted things in the beginning, some fun facts to share. Well, today I have 2 quotes I want to share with everybody. So the first quote is from a boxer that we all know, or should all know. Muhammad Ali said this. He says, "I don't count my sit-ups. I only start counting once it starts hurting." So I do some sports performance training, a lot of speed and agility, strength and conditioning, things like that. One of the things that I talk to my athletes about is there's a point where it starts to get hard. Now, there's always a difference between being hurt and being injured. I talk to them a lot about that. So if it's injured, I don't want them to keep going. I want them to stop and heal. But if it just hurts because it's hard, or they're putting in the hard work, then I always tell them there's always something more that they have to give. They can always reach inside themselves and find some other thing to get them to do a little bit more. So whether it's energy or the will, or so we're doing push-ups, and if I can do 10 push-ups and I stop at 10, well, that's not good. So I tell my athletes, if you can do 10 push-ups, go for 11, go for 12. So there's always something inside where you can reach down and just pull out a little bit more. There's a movie that I love. I mean, the acting is a little bit suspect, but there's a movie that I love, and there's a scene in there that's pretty infamous. But the movie is called Facing the Giants. If you've never seen it, definitely go watch it. It's extremely inspirational. It's a great movie. The acting at times gets a little suspect, but you can get past that. It's a great movie. There's a scene in there where it's a football team, and the coach challenges one of the star players. And the star player is pretty cocky, and he's kind of lazy, and so he challenges him to do the death crawl. And if you don't know what the death crawl is, you get a guy, you get on your hands and knees like you're going to do a bear crawl, get somebody on your back, and they interlock. They kind of hold your shirt or whatever, and they're up on their back like a upside down bug, like a beetle. And their hands and their feet are in the air, and they're balancing while you're doing the bear crawl or the death crawl across the football field. So he challenges him and says, "Listen, I just want you to go to the 50." And he said, "I'm going to blindfold you." And the student says, "Why are you going to blindfold me, coach?" And he's like, "Because I don't want you giving up when I know you can do a little bit more." So he blindfolds him, and the whole scene is kind of inspirational, and the music helps. They build it up, but he's doing the 10, and he gets to the 20, and you can tell he's starting to struggle, and he's sweating, and he's asking the coach, he's like, "How much longer? How much longer? How much further?" And the coach isn't actually answering him. He's just saying a little more. And then the coach gets down and starts crawling with him and starts kind of motivationally yelling at him, saying, keep going. I need you to keep going." And he says, "I got to be at the 50. So at the end, the kid collapses, and the coach says, "I want you to look up. You're in the end zone." So he crawled the whole field. So anyway, very inspirational. A little bit to do with what we're going to talk about, but definitely has something to do with that quote. And I always challenge my players that there's always something more. Our body, or I may get this mixed up, but we do something and we work so hard, and our body wants to give up because it's hard. Okay, and then our mind convinces our body that we should stop because it's hard. But we can always find something to reach down and get us past that last little hump, just to give a little bit extra. And actually, another show, but actually that's going to be what separates the great athletes from the good ones. But anyway, okay, next quote. This is one of my. I'm a big Lakers fan. I always have been, not just recently, but I have been. One of my favorite players, Shaquille O'Neal, loved Shaq, loved Kobe. So one of my favorite coaches actually started when he was with the Bulls and Jordan and that era, but from Phil Jackson. And he said, wisdom is always an overmatch for strength. Wisdom is always an overmatch for strength. And I used to wonder if Phil Jackson was actually a good coach, because he had some pretty darn good players, with Pippen and Jordan and those guys. And then he had Kobe and Shaq and those guys. And so you wonder if he was actually a good coach or if he just had some really good players. But then you start to think maybe it wasn't so much in the X's and O's, but more of the managing of the players and the personalities. And there's so much more to being a coach than just drawing up plays. And there's so much more to being a coach than just X's and O's and just the knowledge of the game. So much of being a coach is motivating your players, connecting with your players, relating to your players. And helping your players get to a point where they can't get to themselves, which is very mental. And that's kind of a segue into what we're going to talk about here. But I wonder if Phil Jackson, and that's why they call him the guru of this, the Zen master. He had such a way of helping people mentally. But that quote is awesome because as I get older, I still like to play as much as my body will let me. My knees are shot. I need to get surgery. But I still try to convince myself I can keep going. So I still like to play. And when I get the chance, I play. And in my brain, I'm like, yeah, I can do this. I can take these guys. And then I'm not able to do the things I once was able to do. But I joke with my son all the time that I'll always win out. Age will always win out because we're a lot wiser. So these young kids, I go to the park and they're 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and I can keep up, and I can win. I win some, I lose some, but I can keep up and I can compete. And the reason isn't because of my athleticism, because that there was a day for that and it's not today. But these kids rely so heavily on their athleticism, their strength, and their speed, and it's like they throw out all the wisdom, throw out their brains, and let's just go with the muscle. And then that's why older guys like myself, who can't run faster than these guys, can't jump higher than these guys, not anymore, still win because we can outwise them. Anyway, okay, so I'm excited for today's show because we have 3 topics we're going to talk about. We're going to try to keep it to 3 each show, unless there's one really pressing issue that takes up the whole time. But today we have three topics that I'm extremely opinionated about and pretty passionate about, one of which is affecting our culture extremely deeply, currently. So, but before we get started, I just want to let everybody know this is a live show. So if you want to be featured on the show, can't guarantee that it'll get in, but we'll try. But if you want something featured on the show, if you have a question, a comment, a concern, an opinion, a thought, anything that you'd like to share, or something that you would just like to get another person's opinion on, you can text it to 704-750-8326. You can email at info@iCOACH.today, or you can simply put it in the chat box over there on the screen there. So, and I think to chat, you might have to have a Yahoo or a YouTube account. I don't know if you can chat as a guest, but I can look into that. However, those are 3 ways that you can call in too. As well, that same number, 704-750-8326. All that information is in the chat box there to the right. So even if you're not able to chat, you're able to read the chat. So it's all over there. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so the first topic that we're going to talk about is, and this is how I kind of worded it if you saw the slide, thoughts on COVID-19 confused. All right, so here, this may or may not take some time, but first I want to share what's happening. So we're all aware of how COVID is impacting the sports world, especially at the professional level and the collegiate level. So, if you turn on ESPN any morning and you listen to Get Up or First Take, I love those two shows specifically. But if you listen to any of those, most of the conversation right now, and rightly so, is about how COVID is impacting the teams. So we got Major League Baseball is being heavily impacted. So is soccer, and so is basketball. Football is being extremely impacted. A lot of it is um, negligence on the part of the people that were planning for these leagues. And we see with the NBA how they've done it. And it took some time and some planning and everything to get here, and nothing's perfect. There is no fail-safe plan. There's no perfect plan. However, the NBA has seemed to figure something out. Okay, so we're watching games. Guys are playing. Okay, now again, it's not perfect. MLB, Major League Baseball, they screwed that up. Okay, they screwed it up, and it was really, honestly, it was because people just didn't want to go and play at certain places. Well, that's selfish. And now look, now there's teams that may not be able to play the same amount of games. They may not be able to continue, these kinds of things. So all that to say, there are some outside factors involved in that. It's not perfect. However, it's impacting profession. And at the collegiate level, right now the big talk is around the football conferences and the football season. And as a side note, that's because that brings in all the money. Let's just be honest, because there's other sports being affected that nobody cares about as much as they do football. Football is where the money's at. Money drives mostly everything, so including a lot of these other programs. And so that's what most people are talking about, concerned about. But there are more than just football teams affected by this. And so we have conferences shutting down. We have, for the first time in I don't even know how many years, but first time in the long, long history where we have big name conferences either shutting down or postponing, or really close to they're having to make a decision: are we going to do this or not? One most notable is the Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. That conference is I don't know if it has since about an hour ago, but they were talking about being on the cusp of trying to decide if they're going to cancel. So COVID-19 has impacted the sports world. Now, here's why I said confused. Here's where I'm confused. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the high school level. Okay, can I get professional sports and collegiate sports? You have the risk of traveling from city to city, so that's a little different. Okay? It's different than high school sports, but you run the risk of carrying or spreading or being infected, whatever, from multiple different states that you're traveling to, and on the buses and in the hotels, and so I get it. And the fans that come to these collegiate games and the professional games, they're thousands and upon thousands. So I get that. But at the high school level, I'm a little confused. Okay. Particularly, I'm going to talk about soccer, but in a second here. So right now I'm currently coaching my son's soccer team. And in the past month, I've seen a bunch of different conferences in soccer pushing things back. And our governor in North Carolina continues to push the date back, and that affects the conferences and the fields and the parks and the things that we can the places that we can use for games and things. And so I'm confused though, because the rule states, and by law, this comes from the governor and it comes from the state, and we are allowed to train and practice. So we're allowed to train and practice, but we can't have games, okay? While training and practicing on the same soccer field that we would play our games on, we are allowed 25 people on one half of the field. Now, I actually heard a report today. I was emailed from somebody who would know about these things because they are a conference commissioner and they would have to stay abreast of these things. So I got an email today, and he asked if I saw the website where it actually says you're allowed 75 people on a soccer field. I didn't see that yet. I tried to find a little bit. I couldn't find it. But I do know we're allowed 25 people on one half of a regulation soccer field. So we could have 50 on one field at the same time, as long as 25 stay on one side and 25 stay on the other side. Okay, so for distancing, all that stuff. If you know anything about soccer, you play 11 v 11. At any one point in a soccer game, you will have 22 people on a field. Now, out of those 22, you will only have 20 that have an opportunity to come into contact with each other. Okay, 21, we'll say, because you can contact with the other team's goal, but the two goalies don't contact each other. Okay, now, if I can have 25 people on one half of a soccer field, but I can't have 22 on a whole soccer field, That doesn't make sense to me. It makes zero sense to me. Okay. Here's the other thing. We've been training and practicing since June, and we've been allowed to. We've been allowed to train and practice since June, as long as we're under 25 people, on the half. So my guys have been playing soccer since June. Well, what's the difference? And in our practices and training, a lot closer than we would be in a game. In a soccer game, you're not trying necessarily. A few people are where the ball is and things like that, but you're trying to find space and you're trying to stay away actually from the other team. But all that to say, it's very confusing. Some of the rules about what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do, when the rules that govern what we're allowed to do are worse than what we're not allowed to do. So we're allowed to have 25 people to 50 people on a regulation for soccer field, but we can't have 22. So that's confusing to me. I would love if anybody is watching, if you all have thoughts about this in your teams, your high school teams you're coaching right now, if you have some thoughts about that, I would love to hear from you. But the other thing is, there's all these cases, right? And trust me, listen, I know there's gonna be people out there that are like, well, you don't think it's real? No, I think COVID's real. I think it's a real thing. So let's not get it twisted. I definitely think it's a real thing. However, we have all these cases popping up, and this isn't a conversation just about the COVID virus, but I do think there's factors. There's a lot of. This is loaded. Okay, to conspiracy theories, to lies, to how they do the testing, to how they count the testing, to people who know people who. But so it's all over the place. It's very loaded. I will say this: there's millions of people, whatever the number is, of people that have cases, and there's like new cases every day, and people are saying, but no one's getting sick. I mean, we know people are getting sick, but do you know people that are getting sick? So I don't know anybody that's getting sick. My team isn't getting sick. My team doesn't know anybody that's getting sick. These other teams I'm talking to don't have anybody that's getting sick. They don't know people that are getting sick. So where are all these people that are getting sick? And listen, I'm not trying to make light of it. However, when it comes to playing soccer outside, okay, football, yeah, I get it. Basketball, I don't know, maybe indoor should have some different restrictions, but when you're outside and you're playing an outdoor sport like soccer, if you're saying, well, there's a risk of getting COVID, but nobody's getting sick from it, and no one's spreading it, no one's showing any symptoms, no one's getting sick, then what's the difference of if somebody comes to practice with the flu, or somebody comes to practice with a cold, or somebody comes to practice with mono or strep throat, but we don't shut everything down for that. Now, okay, like I said, it's loaded. It's a loaded question. This isn't a COVID-19 discussion. This is about really about how it's affecting the sports. A few of my thoughts. I don't agree that it should shut down sports. I don't agree with that. Couple reasons, especially certain sports. Like, I can understand if you're concerned about wrestling. Yeah, I'm not a wrestler. I'm pretty sure that happens in the fall, but I can understand if you're concerned about wrestling because you're on top of one another. I get that. I can understand if you're concerned about traveling from city to city. I get that. I can understand if you're concerned about the amount of fans that'll be there. I get that. As a side note, we're also allowed 25 fans. So 25 people, 25 fans on one half of the field. That's 50 people on one half. That's 100 people on a full-size field. I don't get it. I don't get why we can't have 22. Even if we had 0 fans, still let the kids play. But now I lost my train of thought. But I don't agree that they should be shutting this, at least in my situation for soccer, these hot soccer seasons down. I get that there is a real concern, but I also feel like it's being made into something that it's probably not when it comes to certain sports. Okay, one of those being soccer. If we say we could play games, no fans, teams would be okay with that because they would still get a season. I'm not concerned with how many fans we have. Everybody wants to play for fans, but teams, I would guess teams would rather play than not play if it came down to just people watching them. Okay. The other thing is there's so many opportunity for videotaping games and live streaming games that that might actually help some of these small businesses that do that. All right. So or just have a team manager and have them video or whatever, or just play. Don't worry about the fans. Have somebody keep stats. You can check it on Max Preps, watching the stats, just not live. Okay, so in my opinion, I don't think we should shut down a soccer season. I don't think we should shut down an outside sport season if restrictions can be followed. The other thing is, you're not going to require people to wear the kids to wear masks. That wouldn't be healthy. Okay, if soccer players were wearing masks when they played, if football players were wearing masks, or basketball players, that wouldn't be healthy for them. Okay, you can't necessarily require them to social distance 6 feet during the games. Okay, it goes back to my point, because they're not requiring those things for training and practice, yet they're saying we're allowed to do that. So what's the difference? Okay, so back to my question: thoughts on COVID-19? Confused. I'm seriously confused. I don't know why the governor keeps pushing the date back for sports. I get it. There's going to be some different concerns for schools, even though all the science has pointed to kids, rarely get it, rarely spread it. There's all this concern. There's uproar about it. Again, this isn't a COVID-19 discussion per se. It's more about sports, but I don't agree with the governor pushing our seasons back. While allowing us to play and calling it a practice or a training. So a little confused, a little frustrated. I hope things change. I do think, and since this is one of those shows where this is, we're going to be opinionated, and if you get offended, that's on you, not on us. If we get offended, that's on us, not on you. It's one of those places where you should be free to share. I think it's political. I do. Again, anybody wants to have a conversation about that, I guess we could have a conversation about that another time. But I do think that it's political, which is a shame, because we are at the expense of the kids. We're trying to further our political agenda. And I think that's crappy. I think that's really crappy. So I often joke with my wife and say on November 6th, it'll all be done. Either one side will win and they'll say, hey, we cured it. We were right. Because we did what we said, it's gone. Or the other side's going to win, and it's going to be something else. It's just going to be something else that they're going to come up with, and magically COVID-19 is going to go away after the election. Now, okay, listen, I'm joking, but there's some truth in that, because it is political. I think all of this was political from the beginning. Unfortunately, people's lives are at stake. Unfortunately, the well-being of our youth is at stake, and it's all because certain people want to further their political agenda. I think it's crappy and selfish. I think these people need to get over themselves a little bit. So there's my 2 cents. I will say this: when COVID hit and everything was shut down, there were reports and cases of mental health problems spiking, just like the proposed spikes in coronavirus. There were also proposed spikes in mental health issues in youth specifically, and even more specifically in depression and suicidal tendencies. And you can just go online. You can just check the reports from renowned doctors and news stations. They're reporting on the cases of mental health issues rising. Well, why? Because a lot of these things that these people are taking away, probably over dramatically, are the very things that keep certain youth specifically, but keep our youth as a whole focused and mentally aware and in good spirits and not depressed, and keeps them from suicidal tendencies. Unfortunately, a lot of these things that are being taken from our youth are the very things where our youth have put their identity. Now, I'm not saying that's right, but you're taking their identity, and they don't have, they're not being guided correctly. And so their first thing is, well, I'm not worth it. Nobody cares. I don't need to be here. And then all these intrusive thoughts, all this bad, what's the word I'm looking for? All these things start to affect these youth's minds, and lie to them that they're not needed, they're not wanted. The only thing that made them worth anything was taken. Wrong or right, that's what's happening. And I think over dramatically and unduly, we are taking one thing at least away from our youth that I don't think needs to be taken away the way it is, and that's sports. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on COVID-19. It's a little frustrating. It does suck. I know there's people that are affected physically, getting sick. People have died. I get it. I also get that not everybody has died from COVID. People have died from other things, and they've attributed it to COVID. And so the whole system is flawed and shady and just wrong. Everyone keeps saying they have the best interests of the people in mind, and I don't believe that. I don't believe that that the people that are able to make these decisions for our lives, I don't think they have our best interest in mind. I think they have their best interest in mind, and so they don't care whose lives are affected as long as it furthers their agenda. And I don't like that. But anyway, okay. So probably took up a little bit too much time on that one that I wanted to. But again, this COVID discussion is probably going to go for every show. It's probably going to creep itself into the show, like it's creeped itself into our lives. And I hate it, but love it at the same time because it definitely gives me something more to talk about. So anyway, all right, let's move on to the next one here. Okay, so sorry, hold on one second. Okay, so the mental game, what is it? All right, so most parents, all right, so let me say this. There's obviously different aspects of sports and competing, different aspects of competition. There's obviously the physical part of competition. You have to physically do something to compete. And then there's the mental side of it. So we often hear the term mental toughness or mentally tough. We often hear that thrown around a lot. I don't know that most people understand really what that means. I do know this. I know that sports psychology is becoming something that it never had been in the past. I think it's becoming actually part of the development of athletes to an extent the same as skill development. And the reason why are so many professional athletes specifically are coming out and talking about the depression that they faced, the loneliness, suicidal thoughts they've had because of the pressure, and they didn't know how to deal with it mentally. And so I often talk about the physical side of it, but I also share with my athletes about the mental side of it and how to prepare mentally. There are some things that I would like to read for a second. Okay, so I found this, and I've been doing I was doing some research for the show, and just because I like to dive into some topics, especially these kind of topics. But there are 8 qualities of mental toughness in athletes. So Bobby Knight, okay, a very well-known basketball coach, depends on what he's well-known for, but he once said mental toughness is to physical as 4 is to 1. Okay, so he obviously put a lot of stock in being mentally tough. Okay, so before we get into these 8 qualities of mental toughness, oh my word, toughness in athletes, I want to say this. So many parents ask about how my kid gets better. How can I develop this skill or that skill? How can I get bigger, faster, stronger, better? How can I become a better basketball player, better soccer player, better football player, better baseball player, better softball player, whatever it is, they all want their kid to be better. When challenged with the mental side of it, they kind of look like a deer caught in headlights because you just kind of get past it. You just get through it. Well, that's not being mentally tough. Okay, there are so many things involved with the emotions and the mental side of sports that most athletes are not aware of. Most athletes don't know how to deal with. Most athletes have no clue it's there, although they experience it every time they compete. So I'm going to read some of these. So these are 8 qualities of mental toughness in athletes. Mentally tough athletes, number 1. And this is not in like an order of top 10 or top 8, but mentally tough athletes, number 1, find a way, not an excuse. Okay? Mentally tough athletes don't make excuses when things don't go their way. Instead of playing the blame game, they take responsibility for their performance. Go back to the drawing board, right the ship, and try it. I love this because I can't stand excuses. I can't stand whining. Okay. I am fully aware that an athlete may think something is not fair. I'm fully aware that an athlete may not like something. I'm fully aware that an athlete could get frustrated, mad, angry, pissed off, sad, happy. And I encourage those things. I allow those things. I like those things. However, you can't just express those things in any old way you just feel like it. You can't whine about it. You can't make excuses about it. Not because it's annoying, although it is annoying, but not just because it's annoying or frustrating as a coach, but because you will never get better. You'll stay stuck exactly where you're at because you won't be able to get past yourself. You won't be able to get past the excuses and the whining. Okay. So, I had a softball player once that came to me and I said, hey, you got to do this. You got to do this. And her response would always be, I know, but, oh yeah, I know how to do that, but the sun was in my eye. Oh, I know how to do that, but I thought she was. There's always an excuse. And so finally, I just said, well, if you know, then do it. The problem is that athletes would rather it be someone else's fault than their own, because then you can explain how you messed up. Something deeper than that is they don't think they should be able to mess up. Well, yeah, I think you should be able to mess up. If you mess up, you've just learned something. It's not a failure, it's an education, right? So you've learned something. But if you start to make excuses and you start whining about messing up, then you never get past that. You stay stuck there. You never get better. The worst thing that happens then after that is you can't take anybody's advice. You can't grow. You can't learn from anybody because there actually might be people that can speak into your situation and into your life. But if all you're doing is making excuses and whining about yourself or how it's somebody else's fault, you're never going to get past that. Okay. Number 2, mentally tough athletes adapt. The buzzword nowadays is pivot. Okay. So instead of doing things the way they always have, mentally tough athletes find new ways of challenging themselves, pushing themselves to outer limits of their potential. Mentally tough athletes understand what they did yesterday got them to where they are today. Oh, I love that. But more is required today to get them to where they want to be tomorrow. I really like that. So hold on, I'm going to say it again. Mentally tough athletes understand this. What they did yesterday got them to where they're at today. But more is required today to get them where they want to be tomorrow. Oh, that's awesome, because most times, or a lot of times, athletes will work hard at something, they'll get somewhere, and then they stop, and then they think they got to move on to something else, and they never grow past where they stopped because they feel like they've arrived. That's the statement that we hear and that we repeat, is somebody thinks that they've arrived. Okay. I love when an athlete works hard. And if they're the best athlete, I love when they just work hard and they work hard. And the worst athlete, they work hard and they work hard. Because you know what? Eventually, they're not going to be where they were before they started to work hard. It's the athletes that work hard and then stop. And they're good. I'm good. And then they never go past that point. And these athletes who were never as good as them before, all of a sudden now start to pass them. And you start to wonder why, but they never stopped working. I love that. I love that statement. I might actually use that. As a side note, somebody once jokingly told me that copyright means the right to copy. So that's awesome. Okay. Just kidding, by the way. All right. So mentally tough athletes understand what they did yesterday got them to where they are today, but more is required to get them where they want to be tomorrow. That's such a good life lesson as well. Anyway, all right. Number 3. Mentally tough athletes expend their energy on things that benefit performance. This is awesome. And this has so many other levels, but mentally tough athletes focus on the things they can control. Okay. Mentally tough athletes don't dwell on the past or feel sorry for themselves, nor do they concern themselves with distractions outside of their direct control. Mentally tough athletes focus on what they can do in the present moment to overcome the challenges of performance and give them the best opportunity to succeed. How often do we say quarterbacks have to have a short memory? Right? You throw an interception, you can't be thinking about that interception next snap you take, right? How about a pitcher gives up a home run? They can't be thinking about that home run the next batter they face, or the goalie that lets up a penalty kick. You can't be thinking about that next shot they have to save, right? So I love this because I often say there's a difference between just not doing what's wrong and purposefully doing what's right. That may sound like the same thing, but they're completely different. So expend their energy on things that benefit performance. So what are you doing? Well, I'm not doing this. Yeah, but are you doing this? That's kind of the point. So are you doing the things that are going to benefit your performance? Yeah, well, but I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not disrespecting anybody. I'm not listening to my coach. Yeah, but what are you doing that's benefiting your performance? So as a coach, I say, all right, we're going to do offense, defense, right? Offense, defense, which we do a lot. I love it. For the first string offense against first string defense, love it. And then getting the guys in there, the guys who I want to compete for a spot, who have every right, just as everybody else, to be on that first team. Okay, so I put offense versus defense, and I want them to play hard. I barely call fouls. I want them to fight a little bit, not physically. I mean, not like fist fight, but I want them to fight for the ball and wrestle. You know, a little hand-to-hand combat on the soccer field. I love it. So I pit them together or against each other. So a good example is, well, what are you doing in that moment that's going to benefit your performance? So are you not giving up? That's a good thing. I don't want you to give up. But are you 100% effort when you feel like you have nothing left, still trying to sprint and beat that guy to the ball? I mean, you did jog there, so you didn't give up. But that's not benefiting your performance. So I love when athletes focus on the things that are going to benefit their performance. So, and I talk to my son about this all the time. So it's like, well, I didn't do this. Yeah, but did you do this? You didn't do this. You just focused on what not to do, but you didn't focus on what to do. So anyway, so I like that. I really like that. Now, and I also talk to my athletes, specifically my son, because I have a hot opportunity to talk to him, is he can only control what he can control. Okay, so this mentally tough athletes don't dwell on the past or feel sorry for themselves, nor do they concern themselves with distractions outside of their direct control. You can only control what you can control. He is responsible, my son, for doing what he can do. Every athlete on the field, court, any sports arena, you can only do what you're going to be accountable for what you are supposed to do. So you cannot control the other people on your team. If you try to control what someone else is doing and they don't do what you want them to do, now that's affected your performance as well. While they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, now you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You cannot control anybody else but yourself. You can't control what other people do. You can only control what you do. So focus on what you are supposed to do and do the right thing. Make a right decision based on what you can do. You can control that. Okay. All right. Mentally tough people, number 4, see the past as valuable, informative lessons and nothing more. Mentally tough athletes learn from their mistakes and the mistakes of others, then let go of the past and move forward. Mentally tough athletes see the past as mental training for better performance in the future. Mistakes, errors, and losses don't define mentally tough athletes. These experiences strengthen their resolve. That's cool. I like that. I always tell my athletes that every situation, you can always take something from it. So if you made a mistake, you now know what not to do next time. So from that situation where you feel like you made a mistake or made the wrong decision or whatever it is, you go into that situation, you say, what did I do right? What did I actually do right? Because I'm going to take that with me. I'm going to continue to do that. What did I do wrong? And how can I make it right? So what is the thing that I did it wrong? Why was it wrong? So I go into the next situation and I do something differently. I don't do that same thing. And now I can correct it. Okay, so that's taking the past and using that experience to strengthen your resolve. That's good. I like that. Okay, it's also all these are really good life lessons. I mean, sports parallel life. Instead of parallel, I like to say sports and life meshed or merged because there's life lessons in all this. Okay, mentally tough athletes take risks. This is a cool one. Mentally tough athletes understand that fear of failure prevents fully committing to and achieving excellence in their sport. I'm going to read the rest, but I want to stop there. Mentally tough athletes understand that fear and failure prevents fully committing to and achieving excellence in their sport. As a dad, my son believes that I have expectations for him. They're unrealistic. He believes he can't live up to my expectations. Many times, I probably make him feel like that. So yes, most of it is probably my fault and not his. But if I can examine my life in this area, yes, I probably require much of him or expect much of him, hope much of him, and then strongly encourage him to do much. But if he doesn't, never once have I disowned him. Never once have I treated him like I didn't love him. Never once has he not been my son. Never once have I ever treated him differently because he couldn't achieve that goal. Okay. However, I have his whole life said, if you give anything less than 100% effort, that's not good. That's unacceptable. That doesn't mean you're going to score a goal every time or hit a 3-point or whatever it is. Whatever your goal is, doesn't mean you're going to hit that every time. But if you 100% effort, give 100% effort trying to, I can't be upset at that. I can't be upset. And the things that he can do, I'm going to expect him to do at 100%. Maybe not expect some of the other guys to do it because they can't do it quite yet. They're learning. He's a little bit further, and there's other people that might be a little bit further than him. I'm going to expect different things of them. Okay, so, but the fear of failure, if that's what's driving you, you won't fully commit to what you're supposed to do. You won't achieve what you're trying to achieve because you will never go there. You will always say, well, if I don't do this, I can't fail. If I don't do this, I can't mess up. If I don't do, but the catch-22 is then you never do it. So I love that. Mentally tough athletes seek out opportunities to move out of their comfort zone. I love when, and I tell my athletes this, and I love when athletes do things that they're not comfortable with, that maybe they don't know how to do really well. I feel like, especially in the sports that require this, I feel like whatever you do with your right hand, you should be able to do with your left hand. Whatever you do with your right foot, you should be able to do with your left foot. And I love the athletes that actually work on that when they know that it's not comfortable because they don't have a good left hand or a good left foot, but they work on it constantly, I have a defender that worked on it constantly, and now he's actually using his left foot in situations because he took a chance and sought out an opportunity outside of his comfort zone. He now has become more useful to our team. His skill set now is going to help him achieve excellence in that sport. Okay, he's actually going to be able to fully commit now because he's has developed that. Okay? Mentally tough athletes meet challenges with enthusiasm instead of dread and anxiety. Mentally tough athletes refuse to be average and understand they may miss the mark on occasions, but it is worth taking the chance in order to achieve great things. We had a scrimmage today at our soccer practice, and I mixed up the teams a couple of times because I wanted to see some people work together. Our first game is a week, and I want to make sure I'm putting the right combination together. So tried some different things and actually put some of our best guys on one team. Okay. As soon as I did that, a lot of the guys on the other team were like, "Oh, really? Are you serious, coach? Do you know what you're doing?" And it speaks right to this, speaks to that, because a mentally tough athlete would look at that situation and say, I don't think I can beat them. I don't think I can beat that person. I don't think I can beat that team. But you know what? I'm going to go out. I'm going to try. I'm going to do some things that I think might help me beat them. Personally, inside, I might not think I can, but I'm going to surprise myself. So I'm going to go and tackle it head on. That's a mentally tough person. And you find out those kind of athletes actually achieve those things. That's where you get underdog stories from. Yeah, that's where they come from. Imagine if every athlete thought the opposite of being mentally tough for this, never took a risk, always stayed mediocre, did the opposite of what this number 5 is saying. Imagine that. We would never have an underdog. We wouldn't have an underdog. There wouldn't be an inspirational story. There would be no Miracle in hockey. There would be no Rudy. There wouldn't be any of these games where you're like, there's no way I saw that coming. Right? Can you believe that happened? There wouldn't be any of that. But these athletes went out and they became mentally tough, and they decided to conquer their fear, okay, conquer their anxiety, take risks, things like that, okay? All right, so number 6, mentally tough athletes remain persistent despite of failure. Mentally tough athletes are never defeated by failure. Mentally tough athletes understand that failure is another step in the journey towards accomplishment. Mentally tough athletes have the mindset that failure is not final and never quit pursuing their objectives. All right, so this kind of explains itself, but if that weren't true, we would never have the light bulb. Okay, so we all heard this story about how many times the light bulb was tried, and then it was broke, and then given another opportunity, now we have light. Okay, now we have the light bulb. But if there's any athlete that does not think that they're going to mess up, they are delusional. Okay, no one's perfect. Everyone is going to mess up. Everyone is going to make mistakes. Professional athletes call timeouts when they shouldn't. The top athletes in the world make decisions that you're like, are you kidding me? They're a professional athlete. They should know that. They mess up. You want to know why? Because we're human. You want to know why else? Is because we all have sin inside of us. Okay, we are all innately selfish. We want to do what we want to do. Sometimes we don't think through. So I want to call a timeout because I need to stop the game, so I'm not going to think. I'm just going to call a timeout. And then, you're out of timeout, you get a technical. I get really angry because somebody tricked me, so I'm going to go retaliate. And then you get a foul. Let's see. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Wow. Okay. Let me just talk about failure. It'll come back to me. I hope. So mentally tough athletes are never defeated by failure. Oh, what I was saying is none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. The athletes that think they are and that can't mess up are usually the ones that are very arrogant, cocky, usually the ones that fail. Okay, ultimately. Mentally tough athletes are never defeated by failure. So they understand that failures will happen because no one's perfect. Okay? So failures will happen at some point. Is that the thing that's going to keep me down, or am I going to persevere? Am I going to push past it? Am I going to take that failure? Am I going to learn from it? Am I going to look at that as a step in my journey? All right. So, all these little failures, there's little successes woven throughout all our little failures, and they all become our story. They all become part of our journey to accomplish the things we're trying to accomplish. Okay. All right. I heard a quote. I'm going to probably misquote it, but a calm sea never made a good sailor. I think that was kind of how it went. So, we're being refined as we go through our journey, and there's success, and then there's failure, and then there's success. There may be a huge failure, and there's a huge success, little successes, big, little failures. So it's all along our journey. We're being refined into the people we need to be and accomplishing the things that we're trying to accomplish. Okay, number 7. Mentally tough athletes pursue excellence, not perfection. Mentally tough athletes have a goal, but their focus is on the steps they need to take to get to that goal. Mentally tough athletes understand that optimal performance is a marathon, not a sprint. Each step along the way moves them closer toward the ultimate goal. They are not embarrassed by mistakes. Do not try to be perfect. Push themselves to the max and seek daily improvement. Mentally tough athletes understand they will make mistakes along the way, and these mistakes are both necessary and critical turning points in their journey towards excellence. So I have a theory, and this could be put to anything, but I challenge my team every season with what their ultimate goal is. And I say winning is a really good thing to want to do, but it's a really terrible ultimate goal. So if winning as a team is our ultimate goal, and if we don't win, if we lose, then we're all failures. We all suck. Well, we all know that's not true, but that's our ultimate goal. And we didn't reach, so we're failures. We know that's not true because of all the things that lead up to what we've been doing. Okay. So our ultimate goal is going to be 100% effort all the time. That's our ultimate goal. And to take it further with our team, our ultimate goal is 100% effort because that honors God. And that's how we're going to play. And that is our ultimate goal. Okay. The winning and losing will take care of itself. We'll get wins, we'll get losses. Okay. But 100% effort, the glory of God, that is our ultimate goal. Okay. Number 8. Mentally tough athletes concern themselves with their talents and abilities. Mentally tough athletes don't try to please others, nor do they resent the success of other athletes. They focus on themselves, their talents, improving themselves, implementing their game plan, and achieving the goals they set for themselves. So this is a hard one for athletes because everybody wants the accolades, everybody wants the attention, everybody wants the glory. So you play for the fans, and I can't stand when I really can't stand when people score a goal in soccer and they run to the corner, take their shirt off. I can't stand that. I don't let my players do that. I've already told them if they do that, they're going to be sitting. Um, I can't stand when athletes, especially our professional athletes who are supposed to be the role models of our youth athletes, are fighting with the crowd. They go into the crowd and look at me and they stand up. I can't stand that. Puff your chest. Just go play. Okay. The best athletes in the world are the ones that scored a touchdown. Go get the ball and give it to the referee, not the ones that are trying to come up with all this theater stuff so that fans will talk about you. And the best, most mentally tough athletes, they don't play for other people. They don't try to please others. They play the game. They don't corrupt the game. They don't spoil the game. They don't taint the game. They play because they've been given an opportunity to play. God has given them an opportunity to play the sport that they love, that they have fun doing, and that's what they do. They don't play so that fans will like them. They don't play so that they'll make more money. They don't play so that someone will say they're good. They just play. Sports don't change. Soccer doesn't change. Basketball doesn't change. Football doesn't change. The game never changes. Okay? So you just go and play. What happens is we change the game. We try to change the game because then we insert self into there. Just go play. The most mentally tough athletes, they play the game not to please others, and they never resent success of other athletes. They actually praise the success of other athletes. And you know what? They want to compete against those athletes because I want to be the best I can be, and I want you to be the best you can be. And we're making each other the best athletes that we can be. That is the perfect competition. Whoever wins, wins. Whoever loses, loses. But we've just competed as hard as we can and made each other the best athletes that we could ever be. That's perfect competition. Okay. So those are the 8. I don't know how they worded it. 8 qualities of mental toughness in athletes. All that to say, I'm going to end that little segment with. I got one more topic. I have about 8 minutes left, so we're going to try to keep these things at an hour or under. The mental aspect of the game is just as important, if not more, than the physical aspect of the game. And as athletes, you should pay attention to this, and you should put some time, energy, and effort into it. If as a coach or as a parent, you should do the same. Okay. All right. So I found my other little slide here. All right. So okay, last one. So should athletes specialize? All right. So I have a couple things that I want to share with this. This topic, excuse me. Oh man, I got things all over the place. All right. So this topic is something that I'm extremely passionate about. I'm extremely opinionated about. I get questions a lot about this. I don't always share the same opinion about everybody, but just to start, before we get into some of these things, is no, I don't think they should. I don't think athletes should specialize. Maybe as they get older, and you're getting into college, and you're gonna be on a track that you're gonna play at the collegiate level and possibly at the professional level. Then yeah, there comes a time in your life when you're gonna have to make a decision. Some athletes are blessed enough where they can be 2-sport athletes as a profession. Not everybody's going to be like that. Okay, there hasn't been very many. Some athletes are going to be blessed enough to be multi-sport athletes in college. If you're playing at a super high level, that starts to go away as well. So there is a point where someone has to say, okay, this is going to be my career. All right. But if we're in high school, especially like junior and then lower, even senior and lower, no one should be specializing in one sport. And there's a couple of reasons why. I'm going to share my opinion after these, but I want to read some of these to you. Okay, so UC Health Today says specializing in one sport may hurt your young athlete. This is literally about a year ago. This was published. Okay. Let's see. There were some reasons here. Okay, so this is one of the doctors. This is one of the things parents ask me is how will their kid get a college scholarship if they're not participating in or practicing one sport? I'll finish his quote after I say this. I was once training a 9-year-old baseball player whose dad came to me and said he has to get a scholarship to UNC, otherwise this isn't worth it. So that's ridiculous. I'm not the person you want training your kid if that is your expectation at 9 years old. As a side note, if he played baseball the way he did as a 9-year-old, when he's going to college, he won't get a scholarship. Okay, that's why life doesn't work that way. Plus, if he hates the game, he's not getting a scholarship anyway. He's going to quit. And I got some stats for y'all too. All right, so the finishes quote, it says, I tell them that there's a lot of different data to support that early sports specialization could be harmful, and there's no evidence that it's beneficial in becoming an elite athlete. Okay, so here is, according to this doctor, okay, awesome. According to this doctor, give me 1 second. My wife is standing there. Yes, Elijah's just called, so he might need you. So, okay, so my son is out helping another family move. So, okay. This doctor has just said the biggest concern with early specialization is the greater risk for overuse injuries, especially if your athlete hasn't gone through puberty because their muscles and tendons are still developing. Play one sport, you have one set skill set, you use one set of muscles, and you do the same movements forever, over and over and over. Your body becomes conditioned to those movements, to that skill set, to that muscle group being used, that when your body does something outside of those parameters, that's when you get injured. Okay? Participating in multiple sports allows athletes to develop different neuromuscular patterns and increase their adaptive skills. Essentially, by moving and falling differently when playing a variety of sports, that can be a preventative measure for injury in your chosen sport. Okay, so he goes on to say, and here I got some stats for you here. So he goes on to say, there's also mounting evidence showing kids who specialize too early often drop out of sports altogether due to burnout or because they feel isolated from friends who don't participate in their sport. Okay, so according to the National Council of Youth Sports, 60 million kids ages 6 to 18 participate in some form of youth sports. This is a year ago, so that's probably high. Up to 70% of those kids drop out of sports by age 13. 13, you're like a freshman in high school. You haven't even experienced some of the most unbelievable moments in sports that will happen in your high school career, right? So 70% of those kids drop out by age 13 because of burnout, because of coaches, because of the pressure put on them to succeed, the pressure that goes along with having to play year round and live up to the expectations of everybody around you and keep up with the Joneses. And, okay, so I'm going to finish with this guy. He says, there's so much pressure in sports culture these days, which has changed from the neighborhood practices or pickup games to more organized sports. Some youth leagues are starting with players as young as age 7, where these kids should be focused on developing a lifelong love of sports, physical activity, and just having fun. And at that age, they don't even know how to play. Listen, all you parents out there that are putting your kids in travel clubs and all these things at like 5 and 6 years old, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, they don't even have a foundation of soccer. You think they're good because they can run faster than another 5-year-old, okay? Soccer is not about just running faster. Soccer is not, oh, my kid can kick so far, he should be, that's not what it's about. There are some very talented kids, don't get me wrong, but at that age, kids don't have a foundation because then when they get older, they're not even that good anymore. You want to know why? Because they started so young trying to play at a level where they skipped all the fundamentals. They haven't perfected the fundamentals. Oh, I know how to dribble, I know how to kick. That's not soccer. I know how to shoot, I know how to dribble. That's not basketball. You haven't perfected the fundamentals at age 7 when your parents have gotten you into this stuff. And parents, we do this. You put your kids into these things because you're like, they got to be seen. That's how they got to play. They're going to make it. What else are they going to do? They're never going to be seen if they don't. You have to be on this. That's a lie. That's a bunch of crap. That's a load of crap. Okay, you do not need to do that. That's a lie that parents buy into, and some of you may have bought into that. Okay, they need to perfect the fundamentals at that age. Okay, that's a whole nother show. But anyway, so do not need to specialize. Okay, I don't agree with specializing. I think if kids do, you're not going to judge somebody for specializing. All right, but playing multiple sports, and the science backs it up, that kids are more, they have a better skill set. They're less likely to be injured. Okay, there obviously is a transfer of skill sets, woven into the different sports that will benefit somebody that, as opposed to somebody who's specializing. Okay, I'm not saying that everyone who specializes is not going to be good. Don't get me wrong. Okay, so this is another. This is a healthier Michigan. Okay, so this is just an article that I found. Research has shown that playing multiple sports gives players the ability to use a wide set of skills and become a more well-rounded athlete. There are Division I coaches coming out now saying, I actually would rather recruit multi-sport athletes because I know there's a less likelihood of injury. They're going to be more adapted. They're going to be able to do some things better than some of the specialized sport athletes. Okay. This article goes on to say they raise a good question. Specializing in a single sport allows your child to heighten their performance in that sport. That's not true. That's not true, because you don't have to specialize to work on that skill. You don't have to specialize to be a good basketball player. You can be a good basketball player playing basketball whenever. Okay. Doesn't mean you can never touch a basketball only when it comes to basketball season and then just expect to be great. You're not going to wake up one day and just be good. You have to work at it. But the athletes that want to go somewhere, they're going to work on their craft. So they're going to work on their skills. You're going to be training in the off seasons, even if you're playing another sport. Okay, you're going to be doing some things here and there. The best athletes just go to play. They just go to the parks, and they play, and they develop these different skill sets that benefit them in whatever sport they're playing. Okay. All right, last little article here. Okay, this comes from HuffPost. It's a blog. Why kids shouldn't specialize in one sport. Okay? And these are just some cool things. Okay. In the last 5 years, fewer kids are active through sports, due in part to early single sport specializations. Just numbers, not my opinion. In a move that surprised many sports parents, this was a couple years ago, the USTA, the NFL, the MLB, the NHL, the NCAA, US Olympic Committee, and 36 other leading sports organizations joined forces to speak out against the popular early specialization trend in youth sports, where children under 12 focus intensively on one sport at the exclusion of others year-round. Okay. In Sports Business Journal, okay, this is a renowned leading trade journal, right? In an ad that appeared in Sports Business Journal, the group highlighted the risk of early specialization in developing bodies and encouraged instead, a multi-sport approach, which, and this is from Sports Business Journal, can lead to better performance, less burnout, less social isolation, and most importantly, more lifelong enjoyment in sports. Okay, so again, that statistic, the last 5 years, fewer kids are active through sports due in part to early single sport specialization. Okay, so parents all across the country have their kids playing one sport all year round, not because that is the best thing to do. It's because they have bought into the lie that says you have to do that in order to make it somewhere or in order to be good. If that is the case, why do we have so many athletes that are not good? Why do we have so many athletes that are not making it when they should be, because they're specializing, and that's how you make it. I'll tell you why. All for those statistics that I showed you. So 70% of the 60 million kids drop out before age 13. They're burnout because you play all year round. That's all you do. And when you're young, that shouldn't be all that you do. You should be having fun with your friends. You should be going out and just goofing off. You don't get to do that because every day is a tournament. Every day is a practice. Every weekend is taken up. And then you don't even get a break in the season because then you have indoor. Okay. So all year round, you're doing this. When you get to that age where you're like, I like girls. I have friends that can drive. I don't want to be doing this. Then you start to drop out of these things where then you're like, you know what? I hate sports so much because it stole enjoyment from my life. You drop out. There's outside factors as well, like coaches, but most of the outside factors that cause these kids to drop out are because there's so much pressure put on our youth to make it somewhere. And the parents buy into this lie that tell you have to play one sport for the rest of your life, every day of your life, except when you're sleeping. Okay, and I don't agree with that at all. I have proof that that's not the case. Okay, my son took a very different track. We did that very purposefully, and he is, in my opinion, not as a dad but as a coach, and in very many other people's opinions, further along than some people that have specialized all their life on that track. Okay, so it has nothing to do with what sport you play the most of. I'll tell you what, though, he has played multiple sports his whole life. His body is conditioned to take certain falls that an athlete that specializes cannot. If I only play basketball my whole life and I dive on the floor, or I hit the floor, or I'm knocked down, and I have never experienced, because that's not basketball. That's unusual to basketball, but it's very usual to soccer. Okay. And I've never experienced that. Now my body, all of a sudden, now I come up with an injury. Or if I land a certain way that's not necessarily specific to a certain sport, but it is to another sport, I've never played that other sport, now my body's not conditioned. I have to use a different set of different muscle group, different set of skills, a different body movement, not used to it, I get injured. As opposed to the athletes who are falling multiple different ways, getting hit multiple different ways, landing, jumping, running, all that stuff multiple different ways. Their body is conditioned to do this in various ways, multiple different ways. So the likelihood of getting injured is a lot less. The likelihood of progressing faster is a lot more. Of becoming a better athlete is you have a way better chance. Not to say that anybody that specializes will never be good. That's not what I'm saying. But when you take multi-sport athlete versus specialized sport athlete, I will take multi-sport athlete every time because of all the statistics I gave you. And in the end, I believe that multi-sport athlete will be a better, well-rounded athlete than the sports specialized person. So, parents, here's my warning to you: don't buy the lie. Don't fall into the lie that says you have to do that. Our here in North Carolina, we're starting a new Charlotte MLS team. Rightfully so, the MLS, the professional soccer programs, are now taking over the youth academies and that track, and they should have done this a long time ago because DA was terrible. But they're taking over this new track that allows kids the track to become a pro, right? Okay, so a lot of parents now are, and it's year round. It's all year round. I don't agree with that part of it. I agree with their philosophy behind it. I don't agree with what they're doing. But it's year round. We have a lot of parents now saying that's what we're going to do. Here is the lie. You have to do this in order to be the best, in order to be seen, in order to make it to be a professional. It is not the person telling you that that's speaking. It is the money behind it that's speaking, because it makes a lot of money for these organizations. Most of these, you literally just have to pay and you can be a part of it. The philosophy behind it is it affords everybody the opportunity to be a part of this. I'm waiting to see if that's actually going to happen, because there are kids in poor communities that can't afford to be part of programs like this that will run circles around some of the athletes that are paying for this. So I'm waiting to see the outcome of that. But don't believe the lie. You do not need to specialize to be good, to make it to be a professional. You do not need to specialize. I would encourage you to play multi-sports, let your kid play everything they can play, build up his skill set, his muscle group, the strength that each muscle will build up his body's adaptability. Is that a word? To handle the things that are going to handle, so that he doesn't get injured, or that he lessens the likelihood of getting injured. So there's my take on that. Again, I've gone 8 minutes over than what I'd like to, but again, every show from here on out will be live, 7 p.m. every Monday. You can text in if you want your thought, comment, question, opinion, whatever. If you want it featured on the show, text in 704-750-8326. You can put it in the chat box on the YouTube live thing here, or you can email info@iCOACH.today. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for tuning into these broadcasts. We will hopefully see you next Monday. Spread the word. Tell everybody you know. Again, go to iCOACH.today. That's www.iCOACH.today for all the broadcasts, for all the information. The replay of these live broadcasts will also be up there. So spread the word. Join us every Monday at 7 p.m. Thank you all. We will see you next time.